Dead by Daylight has some interesting characters in its roster. From the killers to survivors, they all, well most, have great stories behind them. For newer players, it could be hard to truly explore these stories with how many characters the game has by now. So I felt this video series would be a great way to open that gate for new or experienced players who may not be as well versed on the lore of Dead by Daylight. In this video, we'll be taking a look at each survivor and their backstory, and I'll try my best to provide a short but informational perspective on them. And yes, I know some people only look at survivors as being skins of each other since they don't have unique gameplay from person to person. But I'm someone who enjoys reading and understanding the lore, so I'll be happy to tell others about it. So let's begin. When Dead by Daylight was released in 2016, there were only 4 survivors for players to choose from. These were Dwight Fairfield, Meg Thomas, Claudette Morel, and Jake Park. We'll go ahead and begin with Dwight. The nervous leader Dwight Fairfield. Dwight is described as being a geek, someone that others can easily make fun of and laugh at. He's not necessarily the strongest or the weakest person of the group, but he does make easy mistakes from his own anxieties. It's said that as a teenager he was below average, wanting to be a cool kid but never had what it took to be one. In Tome 3, we are shown more about Dwight's personality. While working for a company called P22, Dwight's job was to use fake profiles to make his alpha boss look not so awful. This same boss antagonizes the people who work for him, leading Dwight's nervousness to skyrocket, but it's an easy job, so he stays. During a yearly roast fest that the employees and ex-employees hold, Dwight is informed of a drug that makes people laugh uncontrollably. Taking matters into his own hands and proving that he isn't just some geek to be laughed at, he spikes his boss's coffee. While the tome story ends there, we would assume that nothing bad happened, since later on they would go on a camping trip where the boss would give Dwight some of his homemade moonshine, causing Dwight to black out and eventually be taken by the fog after everyone abandoned him during the night. In the fog, Dwight is depicted as a leader, a nervous one but a leader nonetheless, and this is showcased with his perks, which allow him and his team to do better when together. He will do anything to survive and to help his team escape as well. Next up, the energetic athlete, Meg Thomas. The only child to a single mother, she expressed the hurt she felt from losing her dad through being rebellious and unpleasant, but this changed when she was encouraged by an athletics coach to join the track team. She used running as an outlet to escape the worries of her mother's growing illness and motivate herself towards earning a scholarship for college. Tome 4 gives a little more insight on what Meg will do to succeed. As an initiation, Meg is dressed up as a supervillain and told to slash the tires on cars. Feeling stupid and afraid, she decides to one-up this initiation and sets her eyes onto the police station nearby. She slashes the tires and makes a swift getaway, leaving the police far behind and running straight into her place on the team. This ignites a disdain in a fellow team member, Dana, which would culminate into a sneak attack on Meg to hit her where it would hurt the most, her ability to run. Catching her off guard, Dana knocks Meg down and stomps onto her leg, leaving her with a fractured ankle. Later on, Meg is angry at the situation, absolutely furious, but her mother calms her down and convinces her that the best revenge is success. She takes her fury and uses it to drive her motivation towards beating Dana during the race, even while suffering from her injury. She would eventually refuse the scholarship after her mother's illness called for her to step in and care for the woman who raised her, until one day, Meg vanished during a run, deep through the forest. From trial to trial, Meg makes use of her athletic background to win chases with the mysterious forces that try to take her down, utilizing her great speed to make quick escapes and avoid being caught. Moving on to one of my personal favorites, the studious botanist Claudette Morel. Claudette was born in Montreal, Canada, and was always the reserved, shy girl in her class. She didn't really fit in anywhere, and she didn't understand why. In her schoolwork, she had a hard time trying to focus and complete it, but her parents still expected things that she wasn't able to give them. She daydreamed all the time about bugs and foliage and got scolded for it by teachers. She never had any friends to play with and was never invited anywhere by anyone, and this hurt Claudette. She just wanted to be understood. From a very young age, Claudette was obsessed and adored anything nature. She wasn't scared of insects, she enjoyed learning about them. This made her mother very sad since all she wanted was for Claudette to be normal, per se. Then, a new substitute teacher arrived at school. This teacher helped her discover that she is different because she has a learning disability, but that's not a bad thing, it only makes her unique. Her grades began to improve substantially, and her parents finally understood how her mind works. For her 8th birthday, they gifted her a science kit, embracing her love for nature and letting her explore what makes Claudette unique. She would go on to get an early scholarship in the science fields. In these years, she spent her time on botany forums where she became pretty well known and respected in that community. During a bus ride home, she took a stroll that left her completely lost in the Canadian forests, never finding her way out. Claudette's survival in the entity's realm is defined by her ability to learn the environment she was brought to, and how she uses it to her advantage. The plants and bushes help for healing herself or her teammates, and she can hide amongst her surroundings pretty well. The solitary survivalist, Jake Park. Jake was born into a wealthy family, but this didn't appeal to him. He never preferred to live a rich lifestyle. While his brother graduated with honors from Yale, Jake disregarded school completely, and much to the disappointment of his father, he would later drop out. Learning to live off the grid, he sustained the life on his own, surviving off the world around him. After his leaving, his mother still tried to keep in touch with him, but when he disappeared suddenly, the police couldn't do much in locating him, and the search was written off. Being a survivalist and all, Jake knows a thing or two about making it on his own. He can withstand any pain that is inflicted on him, causing not even so much as a sound. It's his entire livelihood to survive and conquer whatever is thrown his way. Now we have our first DLC survivor, the urban artist Nea Karlsson. Nea was released alongside The Nurse in the Last Breath chapter in August of 2016, a troublemaker with a love for rebellion. Nea grew up in Sweden, where she was generally happy. In her teens, she learned that her family were moving to the United States, and her entire attitude went downhill. Dyeing her hair, tagging buildings, and leaving for days without warning were things that her parents had no say in. Tome 5 reveals a new aspect to Nea, as she becomes more aware of the corruption that the world resides in, and begins to see how she could use her voice to incite hope for a better world. While out with friends doing her usual rounds of tagging, she's dared to enter the Crotus Pren Asylum and mark its walls. Nea never walked back out. Partaking in these kinds of crime taught Nea how to evade potential threats with ease. She has fast reflexes and can move quickly without being noticed. The ability to effortlessly avoid confronting the evils inside the realm is a small luxury she has. Now onto her first licensed character of the series, the determined survivor Laurie Strode. She's based on Laurie Strode from the first Halloween film released in 1978, though her looks are not. Well, they are. It's complicated. If you haven't seen that film series, there's not much to that version of Laurie in my opinion. She was just a regular high school student before the events of the movie. Her father owned a realty business in Haddonfield and asked her to deliver a key to Michael Myers' childhood home, which is where Michael got his first look at her, becoming obsessed, and decided he wanted her dead, I guess? Mind you, he was an escaped convict at this point. While later films gave a familial relationship to Laurie and Michael, this version of the storyline does not actually have any relation between the two. If you're not a fan of the Halloween series, you are probably confused, and I suggest looking up the alternate timelines of the films. Though that does not have anything to do with Dead by Daylight or the Laurie that's currently in game, so it's up to you. Technically aged up upon the entity's taking, Laurie now resides in the fog. Her strength and determination keep her moving, and her will to stay alive never fails. She fights back with all her might, and doesn't let the boogeyman phase her or deter the power of a girl who's up for any challenge. She is a high-risk, high-reward type of survivor. And finally, the last survivor of this video, the lucky gambler Ace Visconti. An Italian gambler with the charisma of a movie star. He wasn't always as lavish as he appears to be. He grew up very poor in Argentina, but he managed to build his way up. Sure, they were mostly scams and steals, but he still made a life for himself. He moved to the United States and continued his life of gambling there. Ace never lost a bet, or so he said. After losing a wager over a slug-eating man, he challenged a female wrestler to 5 minutes in the cage, and he was beaten to a pulp, but he didn't let himself give up or get knocked out until those 5 minutes were up, displaying the pure grit it took for him to not lose a bet. He didn't have a great understanding of how to save money, and eventually his debts caught up to him, but no one could actually find out where he'd gone to. Luck follows Ace everywhere he goes, even if that place is an entity's playground. His perks employ his lucky aura he exudes and give him greater chances to win against the odds. If there's one thing Ace is gonna do, it's gonna be to test his luck and hope to come out on top. So unfortunately, I can't include every survivor in this one video. It would not only be too much information all at once, but I don't even know if anyone wants to watch more than 20 minutes of me. So I decided to split up these videos into separate parts. If you like this idea, then I suggest subscribing so you don't miss out on the next videos of this series. I'm tackling the survivors first, as the killers have a little bit more depth to them, and also because I play survivor mostly, but I digress. I really enjoyed making this type of video, and I'm excited of what's to come, so I think I'll probably stick more to these rather than gameplay, as it gives me more opportunities to be creative. I also would like to say a major thanks to Pixelbush Entertainment, aka the Lore Guy, as he was a big inspiration for me to even start a channel, and I really wanted to make videos that were in line with his, so if you see some similarities, yeah. Anyways, thank you for watching, and I'm super excited to share more. See you soon, and have a great day.